because this is recorded, is in our area, a lot of people maybe can't figure out how to get on without Faith Butcher from United Way is here. Some people can't figure out how to get on, but like I said, it'll be recorded and it's also on Facebook. So, good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Marr. I am the chairwoman of the Putnam County Business Council. Putnam County Business Council is a 100% volunteer organization. I just like to make that crystal clear so when my video mistakes happen, you forgive me. And understand that we aren't working with a full staff or any staff. We have Lisa Caslin from Prosper Communications is working for virtually nothing to get everything up and running for our webinars that we implemented about 4 weeks ago. We try to do them every Friday at 4 p.m. We probably will move that time up, if not this week, but next week. The reason why we chose Fridays at 4 p.m. is because hopefully that's the latest and greatest update before the weekend. And as everybody on this call knows, keeping up to date is quite a challenge. So that's why we do Fridays at 4. So if you tune in, Kathleen Abels will be telling you a little bit more later, but we also have sent out a survey to businesses. We really need to get that information back in. We know money is the biggest problem, but we want to know what else we could be doing to support you, what we could be bringing you on these webinars, and anything else that business owners and not-for-profits might need. So for today's presentation, I have Mike Oates from the Hudson Valley Economic Development Corporation and Jonathan Drapkin from Pattern for Progress. And I'm going to let you guys give your background for me, please. And then we will have Senator Harcum is going to be on the line supposedly, and then we're going to have updates from elected officials, community leaders, and John Schneider on the other stuff. So let's get started, gentlemen. Thanks for coming.
Go ahead, Mike.
Sure. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Jennifer, for setting this up. This is another great series and a great way to get information, out to the business community and the nonprofit community throughout Putnam, and certainly by having it available, afterwards, it can extend through the rest of the Hudson Valley for people who are interested, which is great. So a quick background on Hudson Valley EDC. We cover the 7 counties of the Hudson Valley. So there would be Sullivan, Ulster, Orange, Rockland County on the other side of the river, and then obviously Westchester, Putnam, and Dutchess County. Our primary function is to try to attract and retain businesses into the region. And we do that in a variety of ways. We try to work with businesses, finding real estate solutions, finding workforce development solutions, trying to listen to the challenges that businesses face and try to find solutions for them. Clearly, we are in unique time right now, to say the least. This is obviously not just a challenge for the Hudson Valley region, but clearly a global issue, and certainly one that's having an enormous impact on the economy throughout the country. The governor announced a little while ago that he's partnering with some of the other governors in the Northeast to figure out a path to blend the health concerns with the economic concerns and figure out a way to get our economy back working, people back in front of people, in both a smart and safe way. I think we have a little bit of time before that becomes a reality. We're obviously seeing some better numbers, in New York, but I think we're still a ways away for us being in person and having meetings around a conference table as opposed to doing it on a laptop. With that said, there are certainly part of what our role is, and there's certainly a lot of challenges as these federal programs come online. Everybody is certainly aware at this point of the CARE Act, the $2 trillion legislation, which is basically the third of the major coronavirus legislations that came out of Washington. And now everybody's trying to figure it out. And it's not easy. It's never easy when, you know, a massive piece of legislation is created, especially during a crisis period, because they tend to create it and then figure out the rules as they go. And you're seeing that in real time. You know, we were joking before we got online with a number that were on hold here that, you know, it's good to have this in the afternoon, because if we had it in the morning, the rules could be different by the afternoon. And we're kind of seeing that happen on a daily basis. So what we're trying to do as an organization, along with Jonathan and our counterparts in the other counties, with the chambers and the economic development organizations, Empire State Development, is try to get as much information out into the marketplace as quickly as we can when we get it from the SBA, we get it from the Treasurer, we get it from our federal legislators. We're trying to be experts, but the reality is very hard to be an expert when the games are changing. So what we tend to do is we say, we'll do our best to kind of track down answers for you. You know, we open the opportunity to say, you know, shoot us an email, and Jennifer will probably circulate all that to everybody that's on the call today. You know, and we'll kind of do the legwork for you. We'll reach out to DC and try to work with the agencies to get as much clarity as quickly as possible, so that you can make smart decisions as it relates to your business, as it relates to your employees. I think everybody has great concern to make sure that we're in a position that that our workers are safe, number one, and number two, back to work as quickly as possible to help our businesses, you know, to be in a position to grow and survive. We're going to be facing a lot of enormous changes when the dust settles on all of this. The way that we do business is going to change. Things like we're on right now might become more commonplace than they were a month ago, and it might be the way of the future. We'll have to kind of see how that plays out, and I think businesses are going to have to adjust accordingly and figure out how to get their products and services in front of consumers in new ways. So the only way that you can do that, and what we recommend, is pay attention, see what other people are doing, follow trends, try things out to get your information out in front of consumers. Open communication's absolutely the key. If you want to have your customers come back to you, or if you want to recruit new ones, if you're a place that gives clear and concise information, you're going to be better positioned to take advantage of that. As it relates to the specifics of the CARE Act, again, what we're recommending is that all of these programs, all these federal programs, are going to have a component linked to your bank. And, you know, if it kind of goes to that old saying, if you didn't have a tight relationship with your bank, you should, and you should be on the phone with them, and you should make sure that you're communicating clearly the challenges that you're facing and the hope that they can help you provide solutions to that. So we're recommending to every business and nonprofit that we talk to, get on the phone. Don't be quiet. Don't be shy. Be in front of, you know, and make sure that you're explaining your situation clearly and effectively. The sheer volume of businesses that are impacted is going to make it very hard and very unlikely that they're going to have the ability to call you and see how you're doing. They're overwhelmed, you know, to be honest with it. So, you know, part of it is to figure out the training that they have to do and to understand how these programs are running. And they have to ramp up to be able to process these applications and these loans. So they don't have a lot of time for hand-holding. You have to be aggressive. You have to make sure that you're communicating. And we recommend if you don't talk to them every other day or so, get on the phone, send those emails out, make sure that they understand your challenges. I think when future legislation starts to roll out, it's going to be done in a very similar way. The amount of materials that you're going to need to provide for any future package of incentives that are developed, they're going to need your payroll. They're going to need to know your financial situation. So whether you're able to access the CARE Act now, you should start compiling that information. You should be ready, because if future legislation opens up new opportunities, it's basically a first come, first served basis. So you got to have that communication with your bank, and you have to be able to have your materials ready to go. It's no different than, if a storm had come through, you should be prepared for disasters. So that's basically what we're recommending at this point. Try to figure out through all the information that's out at various organizations and webinars that have been set up to kind of explain the ins and outs of the CARE Act, but have clear communication with your bank. If you're confused by anything, feel free to reach out to us, reach out to folks like Jonathan or Jennifer or any of our other partners in the region. They'll do their best to get you those answers as quickly as possible. Our job is really to help you get back to doing what you do, which is not figuring out incentives and tax programs. It's doing the products and services that are the basis of your business. So let us kind of take that off you. Let us track down those answers, and then we'll try to share them in a commonly asked way, so that you might be able to see somebody else's question and get an answer really quick and be able to move on. So that's my quick lead in, and Jonathan, maybe I'll kick it over to you.
Thanks, Mike. I think that was a great summary for how HVEDC is being helpful during this period. Hudson Valley Pattern for Progress is a different animal. It is the region's think tank, and our footprint is a little bit different than Mike's. It's the same 7 counties, but it also includes Greene and Columbia. The organization has been around for 54 years and has been looking for regional solutions to issues that confront us. So we're looking at many different components of the regional construct. So it's economic development policy, education, working with many of the municipal governments in order to figure out how do they deliver services during this period of time. The ways in which we have thought about things in the past, and we just completed a regional study that was released in October. And it really does form the baseline for where the region was at in October 2019 from a demographic point of view, an economic point of view, socially, educationally, and will be of great interest to people when trying to figure out how do we move forward. Moving forward, though, is really very, very, very challenging. There is no playbook. I initially thought when this started that it was almost like 9/11 meets the Great Recession, that there was a cataclysmic event and there was an economic consequence to it. This is not that. This is a shutdown of the entire economy, certainly here in New York, although some businesses are still operating. But the staggering pace at which unemployment claims have been coming in, the number of businesses that did not have liquidity, the number of families that we had reported in October were living paycheck to paycheck. This event is making all of that, the consequences of all of that, very, very real to people who are living throughout the region. And our job really is to both think about how to adjust right now, and this is like building an airplane in flight, because you don't have something to really hold on. There isn't a textbook to go to. I have, all sorts of behind me, all kinds of books in my library here, and I have to sort of take a piece from, many of them in order to say there's little bits of, what it was like during the Great Depression. I don't like to use that word. We're not there yet. That's not what's going on here. But there are elements of what was happening there that are bringing to mind some comparisons. The 20s, 100 years ago, was a great decade for America, and it was followed by certainly another decade of great challenge. This is not going to be over soon. The bill that Mike was referring to was a lifeline. It was, how do we get people through the next 3 months and then see where we are? And Mike alluded to what the governor was doing during his second press conference today, which was he set up a regional coalition, much like he does the regional economic development councils, which I serve on. That's been his way to say that the economies that already existed in New York State are very different depending upon which region you live in. So coming out of this will also be very different depending on which region you live in. New York City's density makes it much more complex in trying to figure out how to revive the economy in New York City. And no one should ever be mistaken about how important the economy of New York City is to the rest of New York State. The tax revenue that is spun off from that, the Hudson Valley's tourism comes from New York City for the most part. Its success is something we should all hope for. As much as we want our own businesses, our own region, we want the entire state to come back in some way, but it's never going to look the same. My business pattern operates now using Zoom and Slack. And, do we really need a physical space to operate? Well, we've been proving that for the last 5 weeks that there is a way to do this differently. And I think every company is going to do a lot of self-reflection about how do they operate going forward. It's testing the capacity of the managers of small business, medium-sized business, manufacturing, every sector. And we like to think of it as, throughout the state, that you're going to have to break this down by region. You're going to have to break the sector, and you're going to have to then lay over it safe and smart health protocols within each business in order to bring it back. The many times people use the phrase, there is no light switch and the economy just comes back. To my friends in Putnam, they told me that you guys lost power. I can't even imagine, with everything that was going on, that there are sections of the state that are without power right now, or parts of the country where the tornadoes hit. Those are bad enough when they occur. They occur now during a period when we're trying to understand a virus where people have gone to look at the textbook of the, great pandemic that occurred in the, late was around 1919, the Spanish flu.
18, I think.
Yeah. So, they go look at that, but it was very different. There was no technology that may in some ways be our great savior, and in some ways may be not the way we would like things to operate. Make no mistake about it, we come out of this and we will be changed. And there will be some people that will say, I want things the way it was. And there are people that will embrace the fact that in order to go forward, we're going to have to change.
Agreed. Excellent. I do have some questions and I just want to add a couple of thoughts. But basically, you're both sending the same message. It's going to be okay. There will be some money to help. Nobody's extremely clear on how much, but there will be money. There is money. I know that loans are going through again today. We'll get some more updates on that. A couple of things I think businesses have to kind of first figure out which is better for them. The payroll protection program is not for every business. It's not for my business. Okay, so you kind of have to weigh, because that money is only supposed to be used for the next 90 days. And then if you haven't brought people back, you're going to end up owing money. There's a lot of different nuances to it all. So you want to try to get an accountant who's willing to work with you, who's knowledgeable of your situation to determine which program is best for you. In many cases, it is unemployment. And that has gotten a lot easier. So then the other thing about sending questions in, absolutely, we're going to provide all their contact information, but I also encourage you guys to use us so that we can communicate with the larger organizations and the elected officials so they're not so inundated with phone calls and emails, and they can get it collectively. So I do encourage you to use us, but we still will provide their information. And one thing, a question that I had sent to you earlier, and then I'm going to add to it, I had asked how well prepared is the average Hudson Valley household for the shock of lost jobs and income, in your opinion, obviously. And then I want to add to that I'm reading a book called Profit First. And I will admit to you, I'm one of the businesses, and SBA quotes in this book that 80% of small businesses that have like 20 employees or under are 2 months away from bankruptcy. So while this pandemic is horrendous, we are also responsible for our fiscal health, and we need to learn from that going forward to, make sure that we're not 2 months away from bankruptcy. We have to really figure that out. So financial support and information and infrastructure is one of the things that we will be bringing you, so that you have healthier books and 6 months to a year of operating costs to keep yourself alive. So I'll throw that question out to either one of you. It was really long.
I'll start, Mike. Look, the notion of, first of all, something I said earlier was, if 40% of people basically were living paycheck to paycheck and they lost their job, okay, fill in the blank. It's not going to be easy. The food banks are being stressed because people, it's not yet the supply chain side issue of food. It's that more people who had food need to go someplace for it. And, supermarkets have certain kinds of products that have not been available. So people are scrambling to find the kind of stuff they need to get through it. Now, it really comes down to, for the first couple of months, it's food, it's shelter. So a lot of people had their, if you can negotiate with your bank to delay the payment of a mortgage or stretch out your credit, absolutely go and do that. A lot of the restaurant industry is going to be, along with tourism, among the hardest hit. The restaurant industry as a whole doesn't have a lot of liquidity. And the ability, if there's absolutely no business, and this is one of the toughest industries, because until we can say to people that it is safe to sit among a crowd of people, how does a restaurant operate? Because then how do you adjust your staffing levels knowing that maybe there aren't that many people coming in? And so we really do have to be mindful of the restaurant industry as a sector that is going to be hard hit. Tourism is absolutely, till people feel comfortable traveling. You're waiting for the pilot on your airplane to say, take the seatbelt sign off and say, it's safe to move about the cabin. And we're not there yet. We're just not there yet. So the ability to sort of reach out and, as Mike said earlier, either financially telling people where they can go for that lifeline, or right down to the neighbor on your street, or checking after some senior citizen, all of that counts right now for, certainly the next couple of months.
Amen. I agree wholeheartely.
I think it's also important to be productive during this time period. This is not, time out for businesses because your doors might not be open. I had a good conversation with a major engineering firm that we work with that does a lot of business throughout the state of New York, and certainly a lot here in the Hudson Valley. And, they're hurting, just like everybody with construction, at a near standstill. What do they do? Well, one of the things we talked about is they needed to redo their marketing. They needed to update their website. They needed to prepare materials that, because they were so busy and things were happening, never really got to it. well, now's the time you better get to it. Now's the time to start to think about how are you going to position your business post coronavirus. What's the messaging you want to be? So part of it could be redefining your materials and starting to prepare for coming forward. I think to Jonathan's point about the tourism and hospitality sector, absolutely going to have a very, very difficult time for quite some time. I was on the phone with a major resort owner just the other day who said to me, well, we're going to be ready to open on June 1. We'll be ready to kind of bring everything back. I said, well, that's good, and you should be preparing in that way, but you also should be preparing for the fact that you might not be open in June 1st, and even if you are open in June 1st, you might not have any customers that are willing to come out. All to the same points that Jonathan was making about the changes on the comfort level of people going to restaurants and resorts and that kind of thing. It could take more time than that. So what does that mean? Okay, this is a resort that had customers coming in from all over the country. Well, likely New York was first in with coronavirus. We're likely to be the first ones recovered or faster on that, where other states are going to see their apex coming a little bit after us. So what is the likelihood of those customers from other states coming over the next couple of months into New York? Probably not that good. Probably they're going to be hit. They might be 5 or 6 weeks behind us. So that means they're 5 or 6 or 8 weeks, more down the road. So you have to prepare for that. So how are you going to market your property? It's going to be marketed towards New Yorkers, more of a stay vacation type of travelers than it would be from people coming in from out of state. So you have to start thinking about those kind of things. There's not easy solutions to any of this, and it's going to be a lot of trial and error. But you got to try. You got to figure out the different things that could potentially work. We talk about the CARE Act. As I said earlier, that's the third of the major pieces of legislation. The word is that they think there could be as high as 8, 9, 10 pieces of major legislation that are going to be coming down the pipe. So support to the hospitals, supports to the municipalities, supports the state government. All of that stuff is going to be coming in some manner or another, which will help in the recovery effort as we start to move past. To Jonathan's point, the CARE Act was designed to show they were doing something now, quickly, to get some dollars flowing, to kind of help people initially. The future pieces that are going to come out are going to be more, how do we change as a country? How do we start to think about our infrastructure, our broadband? How do we think about our hospitals and our supply chains? How do we make sure that our essential manufacturing is not overseas, but in markets, here in the United States? Those are all discussions that we've kicked around for the last 40, 50 years in the country. We have to really address those. So all of that will impact how the recovery will look. But those are challenging questions that will only play out over time.
Agreed.
So Mike, if I can, here's one other thing that I think every business, every organization could be thinking about right now, which is how do they operate under the general guidelines of social distancing and preventing the spread? Because if you remember, the governor went 25%, 50%, 75%, 100% shut down. As he thinks of how to pull back on that, you as a business need to say or think about, how do we rearrange our environment? So I was talking to people in manufacturing, and they were saying that actually they're doing quite well because they have the ability to operate in 3 shifts. They can actually do 8 hours, 8 hours, and 8 hours, reduce the number of employees that show up at each shift, do the same thing in the cafeteria, keep a couple of people at home on a rotating basis, and they are actually going to create an environment in which not only can they go back to work, but that it's safe to go back to work due to the virus. I think virtually every business should be thinking about that for their particular organization.
Right.
Great. Well, you guys have given us a lot of great information. There is a couple of questions I think you could help with. What is your thinking on brick and mortar stores? I know my answer on this, but I would love to hear you guys. You think that, let's go in percentages. You think that, my theory on brick and mortar in the last 18 months and what I've been talking about to members is kind of like, at this point, if you didn't have an internet portion to your company, let's say 6 months prior to this or up till this, you were already missing the boat. I think brick and mortar is now to support, for retail, to support an online presence. So you guys, let me hear your answer. I think you're just gonna sort of reiterate what I just said. An online presence is a must, no matter what it was before this, and it will absolutely be what will make and break you going forward.
Well, I think our patterns are going to change on how we shop. Again, there's going to be a great deal of people that are going to get more and more comfortable on having things shipped to their homes and eliminating that experience. But we're a social people, at the end of the day, and we want to get out, and there's the desire to go to retail establishments. The experience is something that's not easily going to disappear from our collective mindset. I do think that there are going to be some winners and losers. Clearly, there's going to be businesses that are simply not going to be able to weather this storm. That's unfortunate, but I think if we can create an environment for entrepreneurship, if we can create a way that there's access to capital, that there's that communities do the right type of zoning, the right type of planning that better encourages the type of development that they want to see in their communities, that spirit will rebound well. Will it be the same as it was? I think, I kind of like the governor's line of, it's not, when do we go back to what it was? It's more of, where are we going into the future? Because things are simply going to be different. So I think, to your point, Jennifer, I think you do need to have, you can't be one-dimensional. You can't be only a brick and mortar and not have an online presence. But you're going to also have to figure out, how to successfully do that online presence, which is not easy to do as well. It's not a simple solution to say, I have, you can buy the same stuff online. You have to be able to engage your consumers and your customers. So it's going to be a lot of learning, a lot of trial and error. So we'll have to kind of see how that plays out.
Agreed.
I don't know if you want to add anything.
I think take everything that Mike just said and also layer on top of that, the issue for a while is going to be about density. So if you were, the person that went to a mall to go shopping, you're going to be less likely to return to that mall for a while. This is no different than, in New York City after 9/11, you were shell-shocked and it took a while for it to wear off. Mm-hmm. It actually may be a time when I live up here in Sullivan County where, the smaller Main Street may actually be attractive for the first time for people to say, hey, I could stroll there. I could go into the shop. There's likely not to be a crowd of people in there. And if they can make it through, they may actually be an attractive alternative to some of the more traditional places for retail.
Great. All right, so I'm gonna, if you guys want to stay on, that'd be great. I know you probably have other things you have to do as well. Just recap again, absolutely, you have to be productive. I basically, since March 13th, when I saw the writing on the wall, I had already shut down our offices to anything more than one-on-one, and then we went to the full complete shutdown after. I can tell you for the Putnam County Business Council, we have completely rebranded ourselves. We have a new website, we have a new blog, we have a new webinar. We are moving forward. Our goal was to have staff for 2020, and I can guarantee you that we will hit that goal. In the real estate world, I can tell you it's been really painful. I think, you know, I wasn't proud of an industry that was clamoring and begging to be essential. And it's all mindset. You have to get into a different mindset, however it is that you can do that. You know, I saw people saying, how can I buy a house online if I've never seen it? Well, I've done it. I bought my house in the Dominican Republic, and it will be my permanent residence. So you can't just say, oh, well, you know, that's a summer house. I bought a house and I did not see it till 4 months after closing. I had an inspector with a go cam on, walk throughout, and you know, had enough eyes and legs on the ground that I was happy and satisfied. So that's just one and I can just real quick, the real estate market is holding its own. There have been some deals renegotiated, but most of the deals have moved forward or are moving forward at the agreed upon asking prices. And we are putting together 1 or 2 deals a week. We're not putting 20 to 50 a week like we were, but it's still moving forward. But the point is that it's moving forward at the same prices as it was a few weeks ago. Do I expect there to be a little bit of a hit? Absolutely. But there's pent up buyers that haven't been able to find a house in 3 years. They've been in bidding wars who still don't have a home. And then there's people who I feel are going to be leaving the city, and it's going to benefit the real estate market for the Hudson Valley. So I'm just letting you know, I share your pain. We're adjusting every single day to this situation. And we're even looking to grow right now and expand. So get up every day, set that schedule. I literally have high heels and perfume on right now to do a webinar because it gets me into the right mindset.
So does Jonathan. Perfume, I mean.
Coco Mademoiselle. So anyway, I have Senator Harcum on the line and Benjamin.
If I could just do one quick final plug, if I can. Tomorrow morning, we're having a webinar webcast chat with Senator Schumer. Jennifer can send out the link for if you'd like to register. It's at 10 o'clock in the morning. It's a good opportunity to hear from the senator as he talks about the CARE Act. Answers questions and also talks about the potential future legislation and how it can impact New Yorkers. So that's, again, we'll be on at 10 o'clock. Jennifer can shoot out the link to you to register, and we hope to see you on the call tomorrow morning as well.
Absolutely, and thank you guys so much for being here. A couple of questions here about PPP and SBA. We're going to get into that in about a minute or two. I want to just let Senator Peter Harcum chime in. How are you, Senator?
Hi, how's everybody holding up?
Fabulous. Fabulous. I like your background.
So we understand the power is not good up there. It's not good down here. We've been on the line with NYSEG. They've said that the wind has been preventing the trucks from getting up in the poles. They think they'll start on restoration work about 5 today. So we're in constant touch with them and with the county executive. So, you know, especially with so many people being home, we want to make sure we get the power back as soon as possible. So just wanted to give you that update. From the state side, the governor announced today, you know, to the question that you were all talking about, when and how do we come out of this? The governor's putting together a task force with 5 other states, with their economic development people, with some medical folks, and with the chief of staff of every governor of 6 states. So they're starting that process tomorrow. They didn't give a timeline for when they'll have their work product, but you know, they said the time was of the essence. You know, since we've last spoken, I think when, you know, we spoke when this first started happening, about half our office calls were about small business loans, and the other half were for people having issues with the state unemployment site. That has basically shifted since the federal government rolled out the new SBA program, and we understand that from a lot of folks there are problems with that. The banks have run out of money, banks are not getting to people. So we still get calls about that, but most of those calls have been being steered to our federal officials. the calls that we were getting up until Friday, I had 8 people working round the clock taking calls on the unemployment side. So, you know, it just shows you how badly impacted folks are here in the Hudson Valley. And you know, it really doesn't even matter the income level, whether it's working poor or upper middle class. So many people, you know, we're still living paycheck to paycheck. So when a disaster like this happens, we don't have that cushion to fall back on. So fortunately, the state, as of Friday night, put up a new website. They have a new call center. They make about 2,000 calls a day on the backlog. So we're hoping that is quieting down. And now this has given us the ability, starting today, to reach out to our senior population and see how they're doing. We've gotten a few calls about food insecurity, or the inability of the delivery services to get to them because the lines are so jammed. So right now we're doing a lot of work with our senior population, and of course, keeping in touch with our hospitals, our first responders, to see what their needs are. We've gotten a few calls from unions about the quarantine and paid sick leave. So as calls come in, other than the ones that I've described, we're certainly handling those as well. So, you know, as it's a busy time, it's a scary time. And, you know, our folks are on the phone, you know, 12, 14 hours a day.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So in what your point to, basically the calls that are coming in on behalf of PPP and SBA, you're forwarding to federal representatives.
Yeah, and you know, we're trying to answer what we can. So for instance, a lot of callers will say their bank is not getting back to them. And so we're happy to make that call to the bank and say, you know, I've got 6 of your customers who are irate that you haven't gotten back to them. And they'll say, well, it's because we've already used up our allotment. And what we'll tell them is, well, then tell them that. That's just basic customer service. If you no longer have the product they need, and these are people who have 10, 15-year relationships with these banks. So, you know, part of the issue is we need another federal pump of money to bolster that fund because they went through it so quickly. You know, I think originally the intent was just on same financial need as some of the folks on Main Street that you were talking about before. You know, so that's been a problem. So I think when, you know, when you're on the line with Schumer tomorrow, I would let him know that, you know, we've all heard from, you have in your capacities, I have, you know, banks in our area saying they immediately ran out of their allotment, and we need more cash, but B, I think we need more federal control on who these dollars are going to.
Agreed. Yeah, I think it's important that as many of us possible get on that webinar, or whatever you're calling it, tomorrow. So please look out for that information, because I agree, the federal are the only ones that are going to be able to answer most of these questions. Although we're going to get to some of these questions that you have in a minute or two. John Schneider, this is a good time to bring you into the conversation, because you know how I like to drag you into it, because you know a lot more than I do, because you're a good accountant. What's going on, John? Any updates that you have?
Unfortunately, I do have a lot of updates. From the last time that we had talked, we were planning on having another webinar on Friday, and there were a ton of updates at that point. We had originally talked about the EIDL doing loans and advances up to $10,000 last week. That criteria changed. It's going to be advanced based on a employee basis, so $1,000 per employee up to the $10,000. They also changed the funding. It was going to be up to $2 million of funding, and now it's only $15,000 over what the advance is going to be. So drastic changes have taken place on the EIDL side. As far as it goes, there are advances that have come through now. We have received contracts for fully approved EIDL applications that were put in almost 4 weeks ago. So they are definitely following up with that. They're continuing to move forward with the process. It's a slow, arduous pace, but it is much increased from what the typical 45 to 60-day pace is for these applications. As far as the PPP loans go, I read a report that as of yesterday, the banks reported that over 205 billion of the 345 billion was already allotted for, was already taken care of. So that means by close of business today, over 2/3 of the program is going to be at least accounted for in funding, which again, I think is really pushing forward to the federal government, showing the dire need of the amount of applications that are being put in. Those PPP loans have started to get funded, not just approved. I have a client who's not-for-profit, has over 100 employees, and they got their application in on Monday. They received their wire transfer, and it was 1.9 million to keep their 100+ employees going. But they were just as shocked as most people to have found that they had to look in their bank for the wire, and that's how they were notified that their funding was approved. So it's unfortunately a really difficult implementation for an extremely large project that's never been undertaken before. The government, I believe, had just hoped that the structure that was already in place for the SBA funding under the 7A applications was going to be enough to handle it. But they realized, strangely enough, that they're going to need a lot more reach to get to the small businesses, the smaller banks. And on Friday, they approved PayPal. They approved Intuit QuickBooks Capital for PPP funding. Today, they just approved Square for PPP funding. So I believe that there has to be more money that's going to be coming. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gotten 3 of the biggest players in merchant interactions and working capital for small businesses in the nation. I can't imagine that they would get them involved this late in the game if there wasn't going to be more coming. The Fed, the Federal Reserve Board, had released guidance on $2.3 trillion initiative that they're going to be launching, and it included up to $600 billion of small business funding. So I believe that's what we had heard was being floated around Washington on Friday, was that they wanted to just amend what the CARES Act had said, take the number of 349 and change it over to 600 billion. I think that's where the two numbers are coinciding from. Initially, the pushback on Friday was that we're not going through money that quickly, but I think these numbers that came out last night are proving to every bank, to every lending institution, to every state official, to every interagency that operates in this environment right now. I think it's proven that the need is definitely there for additional funding. And it's interesting to hear Mike make mention of phases 7 and 8, because we're still trying to figure out what's going to happen in phase 4. And we're just hoping that it does have that extra $251 billion for the small businesses. The money's coming. Right now, it just seems like the faucet, and we're hoping that the levee is going to break and it's going to get the funding. But again, this PPP, the way it reads right now is you need to start repaying it the day that you get funding, which is going to be really difficult for anyone who's unable to open doors for any type of retail business and bring back on this type of payroll dedication that's needed from the new guidelines of the 75% needing to go to payroll. So it's just interesting to watch how it develops day to day. Money is starting to flow. I think that the government's going to see more and more of this need that we have. Unfortunately, piggybacking on what both Jonathan and Michael had said previously, I read a report back in December about savings that the average American had. 65% had less than $1,000 in savings. 45% had no savings whatsoever. So unfortunately, when you are in a position like this, where there's a nationwide, almost worldwide shutdown of commerce, it makes it very difficult for anyone who operate in a retail space, a restaurant space, anything that involved the arts and entertainment. Everybody who operated in that environment has gotten a swift kick, unfortunately. Thankfully, the federal government has come out with the additional $600 of unemployment, extending that from a period of 26 weeks up to 39 weeks. So it helps, but I think that we're going to see a lot more interactions and initiatives coming from our federal government. I know they've talked about helping to fund states, because if we're really going to roll out and we're going to make a great move in an economic future coming out of this, it's going to take a lot of money at a lot of government levels with a lot of contracts for a lot of different people to operate under a lot of different capacities. And hopefully we're going to see our economy come out great again after this. The question is when, how, and what's going to change, because things are definitely going to change after this.
Forgive me if you mentioned the express export loans, but do you have any update on that? If you did already, just sorry, people are texting and asking questions, so I'm trying my best to pay attention. But did you get any update on that, Jonathan?
Nothing on that. We were looking at bridge loans, which are for current SBA participants in order to help their SBA is doing additional loans for debt issues. There's financing that they've talked about coming out for a new Main Street financing with anywhere from 1 million up to, I think it's 150 million in financing. A lot of guidance will be coming out in the future. It's a matter of they're printing money, and when I say they, the federal government seems to be printing money as fast as they can. They just have to figure out the avenues on how to get it into Main Street America and into the small business owners' hands and into everyone. Right now, it's not just small business owners that are hurting. It's people who are typical employees, W-2 wage earners, who have mortgages that are more than what their unemployment's going to get them. And it's difficult because you still have to take a look at how many people need to have utilities taken care of, people who are participating in heat programs. Luckily, the heating season's almost over. It's going to be a difficult economy for, I think, a lot of people to come through. I think there's going to be a lot of weight that's put on not-for-profits and civic organizations in order to try and assist everyone in the community. And it's going to be interesting seeing how we all work together. And I think finding better means of communications as far as avenues for information is great. Instead of trying to get all your information from 15 different places, it'll be nice to see an efficiency come where we can have streamlined information from the top down where everybody gets things.
That's our goal. That's our goal here with what we've been doing. The other thing, somebody had texted into me or Facebook Live, one of them, about consolidation of services, something that has been talked about and talked about and talked about to death, from schools to organizations. And I think we're going to see that a lot of that finally get put into place. And quite frankly, a lot of that fat is going to be gone when this is over. And I think a lot of things will be more efficient, and look for that silver lining is what I say. Right.
You know, we've been to that point, we've been working. You may have heard about the court consolidation that's being worked on. A lot of that has to do with the levels of courts and the types of courts. But one of the things that I've been fighting for is to allow town courts or village courts to form local regional courts, because they're prohibited by law. And by and large, these buildings and these employees work 1 or 2 days a week. And there's no reason why 3 or 4 towns need all that infrastructure and overhead. So that's a component that I've been working on very closely.
And I ask you to please, you know, I was on the call with New York State Commercial Association of Realtors. I'm on the government body for New York State. And I pleaded with them to make sure that they're in communication with the Bar Association to be ensuring that a lot of this remote things, the remote processes that are put in place will continue. My significant other's an attorney, and he spends half his life just sitting around crowded courtrooms waiting for a case to be called. And the case will take 10, 15 minutes, and he'll be there. I'm not going to mention courts, but some are 5-6 hours. 5-6 hours, room full of people. So hopefully, a lot of that stuff.
And the prisoner transports put the prisoner in jeopardy, put the guards in jeopardy. You know, the more people who are confined together, we're putting each other at risk.
Agreed. And it's also just a colossal waste of time, energy, effort for attorneys and clients. So good stuff. Jonathan, thank you. You are always on the money. We're going to have more.
Yep. Can you hear me, Jen?
Yeah. So I apologize. First, that was John Schneider of Schneider Financial. He's also a town of Carmel councilman. Lucky him. I don't think he's running again. So
Not anymore.
Good
Not
for
anymore.
you.
I took that hat off December 31st.
Keep it off. Senator Harcum, I don't know you so well, but my dear, dear friend Jimmy Reitz, when he was running for state Supreme Court, I was the only one that called him up the night before and said, I really pray you lose. I hope you lose. I like having my friend, never mind. But anyway, so thank you, John, for all you do. Kathleen Abels from Putnam County Economic Development Corporation. How are you?
I'm good, Jen. How are you doing today?
Doing great.
Good. I just wanted to make sure you can hear me. I don't have internet, so I'm doing this on my rapidly dying cell phone.
Okay.
sorry, interruption there. So this is really a time for unity, a time for everyone to come together to help. And Putnam County Business Council, the IDA, and the EDC have done that to co-host a very simple Survey Monkey. It went out, I believe, on Wednesday. It's only 16 minutes, 16 questions, so business owners can breeze through this very rapidly. And it's not complex. Unlike applying for a PPP or unemployment, we're asking simple questions. How many years have you been in business? What's your primary industry? How many employees do you have? What are your sales revenues? So this went out to over 1,500 businesses, and then we were invited.
I just put the link in the
Hello?
chat box. I'm just saying, I just put the link in the chat box.
Okay, great. And, you know, we implore people to get that back to us, because just like scientists, we don't want to shoot from the hip. We want to get our fingers on the pulse of our businesses in Putnam. We want to know what they need and what we can do to support them.
Absolutely. And a couple of people that I will have joining on, in addition to Kathleen Abel, we have been meeting probably about 7 months as a group. Tracy Walsh from Tourism, Bill Noak from IDA, myself on behalf of the Putnam County Business Council, and Kathleen Abels, and then 2 legislators, Bill Goldman, who I'm not sure if he's on the line. He's the chair of the Economic Development Committee for the county, as well as Amy Sage, who is not on the line because she has no phone and no internet. So sorry about that, Amy. I'm not sure if you're listening. But so that committee has been meeting and sort of been putting something like this into place, but now we're really going to solidify it and keep it going forward. All right, so Bill Noak, do you have anything you want to add? Do you have an IDA update?
Well, basically, the first thing I wanted to do is make sure that everybody realizes and thanks all the medical professionals and the first responders and all the support people that are working to keep them tirelessly busy and to control and defeat the virus bug here. And don't forget the other folks in the essential jobs that are keeping the government running and our food and utilities available under these difficult conditions. And then, as we've already talked about, the special folks at the banks and financial services, they're helping us sort through this difficult time. Basically, at this stage of the game, I've been out, and like everyone said, it's a difficult time. People are trying to get through things, prepare for what's about to come, even though we're not sure how it's going to come and when it's going to come, but we know it's coming. And, you know, we'll get through this, but remember, we've got to beat the bug before we can get back to business. In the town of Kent and other towns are basically the stores are adopting to this, using the phone and online ordering, doing some curbside and pickup and delivery. You know, it's just that kind of activity that's going to keep them hopefully going for a while until they can get the right blend, as we talked about, going forward. The town highway departments have been working with smaller crews, but getting a lot of the jobs done, coincidentally because, and with the help of the fact that it's a little easier with less traffic to be concerned with. Town of Patterson is much the same. Businesses are really struggling and pretty much shut down. We do have Peckham Quarry is still operating and providing the infrastructure materials that the county, towns, and other projects need. And, you know, again, people are just doing what they can to stay safe and smart while we're waiting to beat the bug. Obviously, sales tax revenue in the counties is going to take a hit. And the bounce back when business comes back will really determine, I guess, how we survive all of that. From the IDA point of view, the Comfort Inn, which in Southeast, which opened for 2 days, has been closed since then. But it's available for the...
Bill, hold on 1 second.
Yeah.
Jonathan and Mike, you don't understand that this is almost comical. I cannot tell you how long Putnam County is waiting for our hotel. And it finally opens and we get a pandemic. I mean, since I started my efforts in this community, which has got to be at least 15 years.
Right.
You know, at least.
It's a success.
We've been waiting for a hotel.
It'll be there. And I talked with the owner, and he's can talk with the Putnam Health Department, and they're available if they need it for any people that come in and need hotel services, while they're helping us out. He's also worked in Connecticut with his other hotels with FEMA and the other things. So he's familiar with these kind of crises and willing to work with us. So he's available there. Right now, it looks like the Glenida Distillery is basically on hold. I am a little concerned, as Senator Harkins there, for the new prevailing wage mandate that was recently passed in the New York State budget. That's going to affect IDA agreements pretty significantly, and hopefully we'll be able to work around that.
Yeah, there's just one thing. There's a provision. There's kind of a time delay on that, because with the recognition that right now we're in a devastated economic cycle, and it's going to take time to dig out of that. And then there is also an oversight board that can neutralize those provisions depending on whether there are other factors that may be a problem.
Well, that's real good to hear, because they were very close to being ready to say, let's go. And then all of a sudden this happened. So, I know they're ready and they have every intention still of being here. We just want to make it comfortable and reasonable for them to be here. That's our purpose, is to incentivize them to bring the jobs and the business here. So we're trying to do that, just as we have been to, keep the businesses that are here. One of the shining examples is Ace Indico, which is opened up its stores for more regular traffic, and is also continuing to supply the institutions and restaurants that have been able to continue operating. And on a lighter note, I believe that it's time to make barbershops an essential business.
I agree.
Coffee right there, Bill. Oh, well, thank you.
That's what I've got. Yep.
Thank you for all that information. We really appreciate you staying on top of it, Bill. And we know everything you do is volunteer as well. And this business community couldn't survive without you. So thank you. I don't believe Bill Goldman or Amy are on the line. I believe that they're busy working with NYSEG to get our power back and whatnot. So we'll get any links to any updates that they have and supply it. I have Sal Gambino and George Joyner from SCORE. Do you guys have any update for us?
Just a quick one. I apologize. I'm not going to say too much because I missed 80% of this meeting, not through any fault of my own, or not because I didn't want to. I think I caught about 4 minutes of Mike's conversation, and the rest of the time was spent trying to connect with my cell phone, which was useless, and I had no internet. And magically it came back, and I'm here, and I, hooray. So I guess maybe Bill is doing a great job, and Amy doing a great job with Verizon and NYSEG. But at any rate, we are working still with small businesses, many of whom are our clients, many not. I'm finding that the tenor of the calls is changing. The vast majority of the businesses that I've spoken to have managed to get through, submit their applications to whatever of the programs they're applying to, and are moving ahead. We're starting to get questions on what are we going to do when this ends, hopefully. And what we're trying to do is work with some of the businesses, and I think I'm copying a lot of what Bill had said. Again, apologies for hearing only snippets of it, but we're finding it's totally essential for the small businesses who are not local, critical business like your barbershops, who I think will not have a problem when day one opens up. But aside from them, they'll be reasonably okay. But for non-small change local businesses, it's critical to analyze where your business has come from over the last year and a half, and look at it with an absolutely impassioned, critical eye to get an assessment of what you think will return as regular business and how much business you're going to lose. And with that as a basis, find out where your soft spots are, where the weaknesses are, and then try and put in place plans to both cope with a slow reacquisition of that business and also a strategy to replace it with perhaps a different line or a different strategy. So that's something we're working with. And one other thing that I found was very distressing to me because I had no clue is I had 3 calls in the last day and a half, and that's about the amount of time that my system was up, with people who had started businesses within the last month or month and a half. And they say, so what can I apply for? What should I do? And I'm asking the group here, can anybody tell me what I should have told them?
For new business? John
Somebody
Schneider.
that has no existing payroll. I opened the doors 2 weeks before it hit. My total sales were 1 customer and a lot of bills.
We have the same issue with newly licensed agents and whatnot. I don't think I have a good answer. I've said you can apply for unemployment. I don't know if there'll be a consequence that you didn't have earnings before, but you certainly don't have a way to earn now. John Schneider, you have a better answer?
No, unfortunately, I have a client who's in that exact position, went into the food industry, had their grand opening February 1st. It was a great day. And then, unfortunately, now in the position that they're in, right away, we had them apply for an EIDL. We got them what we had at least on from existence, which started in the fall of 2019. We showed them what they had for revenues, just because there's really, unfortunately, very little in regards to legislation that seems to be geared towards anyone who does not have revenues for at least, and not even revenues, but at least payroll for at least the first 2 months of 2019. So, 2020. So if you didn't have the payroll for 2020, it makes it real difficult. If you didn't have the revenue for 2019, it makes it even more difficult. It's unfortunately, even now with the SBA changing it from $2 million cap down to a $15,000 cap, I don't think there's going to be much out there going forward unless there's a phase 4, 5, 6, 7, hopefully all the way up to 8, as we may have heard rumored earlier. Is that right, Michael?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So basically, that's what we were doing, and we suggested that they do the applications anyhow to try and see if anything can fall through, but without a lot of optimism. So thank you. That was kind of all that we had here. Again, our apologies for missing most of the meeting. It wasn't for lack of trying.
It's one of those days, but that's why we incorporated Facebook Live and we record, because we count more on getting it out there than
Yeah.
You know, so all good. Well, thank you. And I have Tracy Walsh from Tourism. Tracy, you have anything to add to the mix?
I do have some things. Mike and Jonathan have already mentioned it, but you know, the facts are exactly what we thought they'd be in this situation. Last week's report from U.S. Travel shows that national weekly travel spending is dropped. It sounds like a big number, but it dropped to $3.3 billion last week, which was actually 2 weeks ago because we were going to do this on Friday. It's down 85% from last year's levels. But what experts are also predicting is that drive destinations will rebound the fastest, and a little bit of optimism here after this hour. This is key for our county because Putnam is a day trip destination. We also offer an abundance of outdoor recreation, which will be among the first sectors to come back. We're already seeing an increase in people visiting outdoor attractions during social distancing, and it will continue to remain popular. But at this time, the State Parks Department and the Department of Environmental Conservation have created the hashtag Recreate Local. And we are using that hashtag, and we want folks to stay close to home. All the TPAs, the tourism promotion agencies, are in weekly communication with Empire State Development, than the Tourism Association. And the 3 key updates from these communications are to continue to promote your outdoor attractions well into the summer months and to start thinking about doing so right into the fall. And which I think is interesting is continue to collect virtual and real life experiences. I Love New York is working on creating some live streams for folks. And I think it's important to note that in the state budget, I'm glancing at Senator Harcum, but as of last week, because the budget is fluid, right? It's a guideline that the numbers for tourism are the same numbers that were in the budget pre-COVID, which means that the state understands that tourism is not a luxury, but an economic driver. So I think we just really have to, we have to stay strong, we have to stay connected, we have to reach out to our constituents, and we're in this together.
Thank you. That was a pretty good report for someone who thought they wouldn't have a report. But so that leads me to one question, which before I switch to community, I have Faith Ann Butcher from United Way on, but before we switch over to community update, what are those industries that we think are going to come back first? I guess, I believe tourism, I think the legal industry will loosen up a whole bunch. I think real estate will be on life support, but we'll do okay. What else? What other industries do you think we'll see open up first, you guys?
Actually, in tourism, it's Jonathan. So in tourism, I think the smaller the entities, so Airbnb, where you might be able to control the cleanliness of the environment that you're going to go into, has a chance to be a place that people would like to go back to, or have it as an opportunity to get out of the city. I think I'm a little bit more optimistic about real estate, but it's going to bring up an age-old debate in the Hudson Valley about, do we want to recruit people from New York City to come live in the Hudson Valley? And then there's always been some debate about, are those the very people that will add to the overall quality of the community, or often are those that say, we don't want any more development because they left New York City for the reason that they felt that they had been gentrified out of the city. Now, this is different. This is, they had left New York City because of the virus. And so, are they more willing to become part of the fabric of the communities that we have in the Hudson Valley?
Well, in Putnam, I would say probably 50% of our population is from the Bronx already. And also, development's kind of a moot point here. There's just not that much we can do. So we already have, enough people that are against it. I wouldn't mind a few people that are for, so the little development that we could support and move forward would actually have some support. I don't know. Bill, Kathleen, you agree?
I do. I think this whole crisis is going to be a game changer regarding attitudes about economic development, particularly for people who are already here. I think they'll see a greater value in having something that will help out our tax base. And I think they'll also see, we're an adaptable species. And there's going to be other opportunities out there as well. For example, online grocers, agribusiness and agritourism as people look to locally source more food, distribution centers. There's going to be opportunities there, and it's all about being able to adapt. For example, the French company that produces Dior perfume is now distilling hand sanitizer. General Motors, they say, hey, we want to make pickup trucks, but we also want to make ventilators. So, those people who are nimble, who can adapt, they'll prosper. And I think that what's happening now is that this crisis has simply accelerated trends that were already reshaping global businesses.
Yep, that's exactly what I said at the beginning of this.
And I think, Jen, I think that one of the things that we're going to see is the development of this transportation oriented development where people can work, play, and get in and out of the area if they have to, where they commute to the city where the jobs are still being generated, but being able to come back to a place where they can walk around and enjoy some of the good things that happen in the city, but conveniently, as opposed to having to get in a car and drive 15 minutes to wherever you have to go.
Agreed.
And also been like, because people now, you know what, they can work remotely more. So maybe their tracking to the city is once a week and not 5 days a week.
Right. Different playing rules.
Yep. All right. Thank you, guys. Faith, what's going on with United Way?
Okay, so community-wise, I just want to, whoever doesn't know, United Way runs the 211 helpline. And in the past 6 weeks, we got 849 calls from Putnam County, whereas in the 6 weeks the year before, we had gotten 199 calls. So we have a 325% increase in calls. Now with that, we had 591 of those calls were COVID related because on the 18th of March, we became the point of information for Putnam County for the public. And also 118 of those calls are from the meals and food programs that United Way has in partnership with other organizations throughout Putnam County, including the Putnam County Business Council, because we saw a need in food programs in Putnam County. United Way covers Westchester and Putnam, and Feeding Westchester has done a great job in Westchester as far as doing mobile food outlets. But what we saw through 211 was that there was a desperate need for food in Putnam County. We had a food distribution on April 2nd, and it was insane. And so we actually, unfortunately, we had to turn people away because we didn't have enough food for them on April 2nd. So now we have a pre-registration program for our food distribution on the 16th. And it hit capacity in 2 days. So we actually have another food distribution on the 23rd, which is now almost a week and a half away. And we already have 75 people signed up for that food distribution. So when we're talking about people have a need for food, there's a dramatic need for food. And being that I can see the names who are signing up, I know a lot of these people. These are not, you know,
there's no shame.
And there is no shame. There's absolutely no shame. But it hits home. You feel very fortunate that, that I can be in a position I'm in now. But it breaks my heart that capacity. Our capacity is 600 people. We have to turn people away after we hit 600 households. I'm sorry. So after the 600th household, we're turning them away. And we have to do that. That's how bad the need is. Yeah. We also have a 300% increase in mental health calls, a 600% increase in regular food calls, 100% increase in domestic violence, 1,000% increase in bill repayment help, 1,700% in unemployment or financial benefits questions. And here's the most interesting one. We've gotten an 800% increase in homelessness calls, and we don't normally get homelessness calls from Putnam County.
No, we don't.
So we've had 8 phone calls in the past 6 weeks about homelessness, and I don't have any for 2019 in that time period.
Faith, what kind of volunteer opportunities are there for people remotely?
So, before we get to that, and that's a really great question.
But write it down so we don't forget.
No, I will. One of the problems we are seeing is that several food pantries have closed. The Putnam Valley Food Pantry closed because of the volunteers. Putnam Cap, which is the largest food pantry in Putnam County, is closed for the next 2 weeks because of COVID-19. And Dave, who's my husband, was volunteering there. So even the limited number of volunteer opportunities that were available, if you were willing to risk an in-person, have even gone down tremendously. For virtual, it is limited. Volunteer New York is a volunteer organization that does have a virtual opportunity volunteer bank per se, but there's not a lot of Putnam ones on there. But if you're willing to do, if you have a skill that you're willing to share right now with a nonprofit virtually, I can guarantee you they're going to say yes.
Okay.
So that's one of the key things. And then, you know, it's really, we're seeing, with the nonprofits, tomorrow we are hosting a town hall with the nonprofits with the Community Foundation of the Hudson Valley. And that's going to be at 11 o'clock, and that's so that we can hear all of what's going on with them. And from a survey we've put out to 50 different nonprofits that have answered, half of them are closed right now. They don't know if they're going to be able to reopen, and this is going to be a time where people are really going to be talking about what their mission is going to be and how they're going to be able to move forward and how they're able to actually serve the populations right now when they're stuck at home. And we also have money that we're going to be distributing by the end of the month to some of the nonprofits. And then we will be having additional rounds of funding coming out from United Way and the Community Foundation.
Okay. Mike, I hear you got to drop off. Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much for being
Thanks,
on.
Mike.
I know this
Thank
took
you
a
all.
lot more time than you thought, and we really appreciate it. And Jonathan, if you have to go, we understand. We're almost done, everybody. So if you got to drop off and you already reported, that's fine. And I have a cat in heat who stopped being in heat, and now she's in heat again, who I don't know where anybody in the house is.
Well, on that note.
Okay?
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Faith,
Mike.
thank
I'm
you.
here, Tracy.
Just to reiterate, you said CAP is closed for 2 weeks?
Yes.
All programs?
Yeah. Well, the soup kitchen is still open because Martha's running the soup kitchen from Second Foods. But yeah, they're closed for 2 weeks. St. Lawrence is taking over the food responsibility for the Brewster School District.
We have a question. So if you have to stop at 600 households and you get 550 households, can the extra 50 household foods be brought to one of the pantries that is operational, like St. John's?
Oh yeah, no, that's what we've been doing. What we did last time is when we ran out of food, we still had some, what are the lentil beans. We gave the lentil beans to Putnam CAP. So we're partnering with all the food pantries. We're sharing with everybody. We were very fortunate. The Food Bank of the Hudson Valley is giving us this food. Yep. So the Putnam, the other food pantries pay for the food. So anything that we have left over, if there's anything left over, is going to the food pantries. Great. We're also giving money to the food pantry.
Great. And again, I want to reiterate, there's no shame in this. I have to tell you, March 13th, when we first shut down, I had about $4,000 in the bank, and my monthly nut is $23,000. So you do the math. And you know, no shame. Look, 2019 for me, I had a sweet 16, my daughter's wedding, engagement party, shower, my mother's 70th birthday party. I went away for 2 weeks. It was a big money thing. We ended up with not a lot of cash in our hand. Now, some has flown through since then, and I don't need to take advantage of the food bank, but if I had to, I would. You know, the most important thing I think that was said at all today is like, if you have shelter, you are healthy, and you have food, you are in very good condition. Just start planting the seeds for the future. Be in the present moment and just know I am healthy, I have food, I have a roof over my head, and then be planting the seeds for moving forward. I'm going to also share a great link from Harvard Business Review on their 5P program for planning, employing, pattern, position, pivot. I'm going to share that link with you guys because it was a really great read. It was a really great read. So I thank you all for being here. I reiterate, we're going to have links that will go out with our email, the links to the surveys. We do need to understand a little bit more about different industries and what their needs may be. I think we have a good general idea, but we want to make sure that we are inclusive with our educational opportunities that we will be rolling out. We'll be working closely with Jonathan and Mike Oates to see what opportunities they have, and we'll share the training opportunities that they're providing as well, and as well as the SBA, the Business Council of New York. I've been working with Marsha Gordon. I've been working with Peter Bardinius, who's upstate in the capital region. So whatever there is out there, we're going to get to you. And remember that we are trying to create a place where you can come to once a week and get all the latest and greatest information that is available.
Thank you.
Thank you. So
Thank you.
thank you guys all so much for being here. Do know that we've included as many elected officials as possible, but we've agreed with them when they can come on, they will. Right now, I don't envy any elected official, not one. It's not a fun position. So whatever party line you are on, try to be a little compassionate to what they are going through as well. So I know it's all frustrating, but we are all in the same boat. So let's not poke holes in it. Let's keep rowing, and we'll see you Friday. Thank you guys.
Thanks much.
Bye now. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.